Are you tired of starting down the path to change with enthusiasm only to end up in a faceplant a few months later? Well, in today's episode of the Grace and Grit podcast, I am joined by master coach mentor Molly Claire, who is going to help you uncover why 92% of people fail at creating lasting behavior change in their life. And more importantly, she is going to share with us how you can be a part of the successful 8%. If you are a high responsibility woman juggling a lot of different priorities while you're also trying to transform your health or your relationships or your career, do not miss this conversation. Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. My name is Courtney Townley, and I am delighted that you're here. I'm also really excited for today's conversation with master coach mentor Molly Claire. If you have been following the Grace and Grit podcast for any length of time, you probably know by now that I am deeply passionate about teaching the real skill sets of lasting behavior change, which goes way beyond quick fixes and surface level solutions. In fact, we don't talk about those things here. So Molly Claire is a best-selling author. She is an awesome podcaster in her own right, and she is the founder of the Masterful Coach Collective, where she trains master coaches, entrepreneurs, and leaders to implement what she calls the 4 fundamentals of lasting change. I also want to mention that Molly has a new book coming out called She Rises, which you can find out all the details of by going to the page where this podcast is housed on the Grace and Grit website. And she'll be telling you more about that at the end of the show today. But she co-authored this book with 12 of the coaches that have gone through her program. So it is packed with valuable insight, and I know it is going to help an awful lot of people. What I love about Molly's approach is her unwavering belief that success doesn't have to be either or when it comes to building a business and leading a successful life. You can do both. And Molly is really such a great example of being able to do that. She is a proud mom of 3. She embodies the integration of meaningful work and life that so many of us strive for. Her framework beautifully aligns with the work that we so often talk about here on the show, and that it's really not rooted in willpower or motivation, right? There's a lot more to sustainable behavior change than that. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I don't want to waste a lot of time with the intro because we have so much to get to. So let's dive in. Hi, Molly. Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here. And I too am excited for this conversation because I think there's so much crossover in the type of work that we teach.
Yes.
And that's always fun to have a conversation with someone who is also passionate about these things. So before we get started, obviously I've already told listeners a little bit about you in the intro, but can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the world specifically and also how you came into it?
Yes, sure. So, what I do right now is I really focus on training coaches and master coaches, essentially helping mostly women come to my community to be trained. And I'm really helping them to understand how to first know themselves, sort of master themselves, master their lives, and integrate meaningful change and transformation. And then, of course, being able to help others to do that. Yeah. So, that's kind of the soundbite of that. And really, to what you were speaking to a few minutes ago, I think our work is very aligned because I think that, when we think about, mastering our life or achieving or accomplishment, we can have this old script about what that looks like, right? Of pushing harder or, just many of the things you speak to and the work that I really do that I'm training my coaches to do and hopefully really impacting just millions of women is what I hope is to help each of us to feel more confident and secure in our own skin and know ourselves and be able to lead our lives with authenticity.
Yeah,
So
that's the name of the game, isn't it?
that's what I'm about. So that's what we're
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
So how did you land here? Like what got you into coaching work first and foremost, and what just kind of spurred that evolution?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, right? So I'll try to give like
I
the
know it's a
abbreviated.
loaded question.
I know, right? How do you put the last 46 years of my life into a sound bite? But when I found coaching a little over a decade ago, and I was at a time in my life where I'd always been someone who was very responsible, very achievement focused, trying to do a good job in my life, trying to do the right thing, trying to, just do all the things as we do as women. And I was at a point in my life where I was struggling with chronic fatigue syndrome. I had, 3 kids at the time, I believe, when I found coaching. I guess my oldest was like 11-ish, 12. And my marriage had been a struggle for a long time and was especially struggling. And I was dealing with some depression. When you're hit with chronic fatigue and your physical health is struggling and you're overwhelmed, it can be a lot. So I was at this interesting time that I think really forced me to look at some things inside that I just hadn't really seen or faced or realized were there. And, my coaching journey began with me experiencing coaching and my eyes being open to new ways of thinking about everything and possibility. And then pretty soon, when I say pretty soon, I mean, like I had this coaching experience and thought, one day I want to do this when I'm in a better place in life. I want to be a coach. And yet it was within just a few months of that, an opening came up in this program and it was being taught by the founder of the life coach school. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. So, long story short, I dove into being a coach, started helping individuals. I wrote my book. I had my own one-to-one coaching program, but then I was also simultaneously doing contract work to train coaches and understand more about how to really master the skills of being a fantastic coach. And so as I was doing these two things, right, coaching individuals and building my own business, I was supporting others in doing the same and cultivating their coaching skills. And really over time, what came about for me was in some ways flipping on its head what I had previously learned about becoming a coach, and really integrating some of my own methodology and also the different modalities and methods and schools of thought that really help coaches to be the most effective. And I'm really passionate about doing that, and especially seeing the transformation in my coaches that I work with and how it enhances their life and their clients. So that was a mouthful, but
I love it. It's so great.
Yeah.
And I love what you said there too about just kind of having the heart for helping coaches to become effective coaches.
Yes.
Because the coaching industry has become so loud. I mean, it's just become a very large sea. And it's easy to get lost within it. And I think there's also this very fine line between teaching and instructing and coaching. And sometimes those lines get really fuzzy. Yes. And it almost like I find one of the frustrations with coaching, at least what I see from the outside, is there's a lot of sort of telling people what to do. And this is something I push back against a lot in my work, right? We're not letting people access their own knowing and lead themselves, which to me is really the essence of coaching. Yeah. So I love that you're kind of helping get in there and help coaches with that work because it's so important. And it's such a strong distinction between telling someone what to do and just really helping guide someone to find the right decision for themselves. Yeah. So I love that you're doing that work. And I also just want to speak to the fact that in that intro, you becoming hyper aware that you were missing tools, you were missing skill sets as a woman with a lot of responsibility and a lot going on in her life and having to face what wasn't working. And that's never easy.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're inviting a lot of our clients to do, right? Is face what isn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it, we really don't know. We don't understand. I can genuinely say that I pretty much every step of the way in my life, I've been doing the best I could with what I knew and
Of
what I had,
course.
right?
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
so it's like we don't even realize what's missing. And I mean,
Mhm.
specific to the part of the work I'm most passionate about is as women, we don't realize where we're disconnected from our own emotions. We
Yeah.
don't even understand what our emotional needs are and
Mhm.
how to advocate for them, both like to ourselves within how we treat ourselves and in our relationships. So there's so much to learn, I think, and it's really a beautiful thing because I think every one of us can have access to a more whole, peaceful experience of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really the offer, right? That's the
Yeah.
invitation. And who doesn't
Yeah.
want that? Like I'm always saying, you know, being able to put your head on the pillow at night, feeling at peace with how you showed up in your day, like that's really the goal.
It's worth so much, right? And how many are not having that, are not doing that, you know?
Right.
I mean, I can
Absolutely.
say for myself, I think about, year after year, especially in motherhood and feeling like, where am I falling short? What can I do more? Just this constant demands that we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think too many of us are missing the boat in really having the peace and strong sense of self that's available to us.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. So,
Yeah.
at the core of our work, both what you and I teach,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk about lasting change, right? Like we
Yes.
both have a heart for that work. So, can
Yes.
you tell us a little bit more specifically about your approach? Because I know there's 4 parts to the work that you
Mhm.
do, and I would love you to share them with listeners.
Yeah, yeah. So the four fundamentals of lasting change that I teach and I train my coaches to work with their clients on are number one, mind mastery. And I'll like name these off and then we can dip into them a little bit
Mhm.
too. So number one is mind mastery. Number two is emotional resiliency, which I'll define what that means. Four is nervous system regulation. And then the fourth one is having the type of action plans and strategies that are actually going to work. Because we all
Mhm.
know we can have a plan, but is it going to work, right? That's the question. So those are the 4 parts. And what these mean more specifically is when we think about mind mastery. So all of you listening right now, there are things in your life you want to change. And within that place of focus, you have certain beliefs about your ability to create that change. You have regular thoughts, right, that go on repeat throughout the day. Let's say, for example, you're wanting to change the way you eat, the way you take care of your health, right? And maybe you're having thoughts like, just one more won't hurt, right? So these are kind of just those little sneaky thoughts. Or you could have some bigger beliefs like, I'm never going to be able to create this change.
Mhm.
Right. And so I'm giving a couple examples there just kind of as a soundbite here. But mind mastery is really about not just changing our mindset or, quote unquote, fixing the way we think, but taking the time, with my clients to understand how are you actually thinking about this? What are your beliefs within this? And where can we see a gap in the way that you need to be thinking or believing to create this and where you are now and then really bridging that gap. So that's like the mind mastery piece of it. Yeah.
And I hear in that too, like that exposure work, which is so hard, right? That level of awareness of just exposing, like what is the current quality of your thinking? How are
Yeah.
you, like what is the real estate you're allowing to consume your brain? And
Yes.
that alone can be such a hard task because
Yeah.
it's not usually fun to look at that stuff, right?
Yeah. And I want to speak to that. I think this is such a great point because um and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, so I know it's not going to be perfect, but it's so good, it's worth saying, even if it's not perfect. Something along the lines of, and I can send this to you. You can like put it in the
No
show notes or
problem.
whatever, right? But the degree to which we're able to create change is directly in proportion to the degree to which we're willing to look at ourselves without running away.
Yes.
And right. And so if we think about this, it's like the more I'm willing to look at what's there without turning away or running away, the more I'm able to see what's there and actually make choices within what I see.
Of course.
And my big fat opinion about this is that most of the time, the reason it's hard for us to see what's there as we look at that awareness is because of the way we judge or criticize ourselves for what we see.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to being aware of our thoughts and the quality of our thoughts, the best thing we can do is just really commit to this idea of what if I can look at all of my thoughts, all of my feelings, and all of my patterns, and I can just see them as something that doesn't define me, that isn't a reflection of how bad or stupid or, whatever I am, but truly just let me be curious about what's here. Because I think the more we can come with that compassionate curiosity without judging ourselves, it becomes much easier to see what's there because it's not personal.
It's not personal. And it's a fact that you literally cannot be curious and judgmental at the same time. So pick your poison, right? You can be curious or you can be judgmental, but in any given moment, you can't be both.
Yeah.
So I think I love that.
It's so normal, right? It's so normal that we're critical of ourselves, or we think, oh, I wish I weren't thinking this. But that's one of the things when I'm with my clients, I'm like, this is the space where we say all the things we think and feel that we would never want anyone to know. And we're going to do it anyway. Because what we're going to find is that, guess what? We're all sharing the same thoughts and feelings that we wish weren't there. It's totally normal. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So what's the second piece of this?
Okay, so emotional resiliency. And I think a lot of times when we think about resiliency, we do kind of think about grit, right? You're the Grace and Grit podcast. We think about this like kind of this toughness. And toughness is not that that's how you speak about it, but I know when we think about that word, right? Like this grit, like powering through. And that is definitely one piece of it. And also within that emotional resiliency, what I'm really talking about is for us as human beings, for you as a listener, how connected are you with your own emotions? And really, and it's kind of hard to put into like a really concise way in this conversation here, but just introducing this idea that paying more attention to how we feel and what our actual emotional needs are and diving into our own emotional world is actually how we build the type of resilience that means that we truly are able to flow with the ups and downs of the emotions in our lives and ultimately be able to have our emotions help us in our lives to move forward rather than getting stuck so often with them. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I teach with that.
And I hear capacity in that, right? Because I think that so many of us along the lifeline of growing up, we never learned how to be with certain emotions. And so there isn't a lot of capacity for holding space for things that are just a part of the human experience. And it's a huge problem when it comes to especially elevating our lives because we're going to face really uncomfortable things. And if we don't have capacity to hold space for those things and also not make them mean terrible things, we probably aren't going to make it very far down that pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it impacts, our own ability to be with our own emotions, which by the way is really hard. It's a skill we have to learn. It's a capacity we have to build. But it impacts the way we're able to show up for others. So my youngest daughter, she's the last one at home. She's 14. She has a lot of emotions up and down all the time. And every day, I think, thank goodness that I've expanded my own emotional capacity because I'm able to be with myself, I'm able to be with her.
Sure.
I'm able to be regulated when I'm with her. So it matters. Yeah.
And what a gift to her, right? Because she's co-regulating with you. And so if you get amped up, it really just doesn't help the situation.
No. So
yeah, beautiful. Okay, third thing.
Which leads to the third one, right? Nervous system. And so, and I definitely go much more into this in my master coach training. And so, because, there's so much to learn about the nervous system. But the bottom line is that we all have a nervous system. And the nervous system is the backdrop, right? That is true. We can all agree on that. We all have one. And despite all the different theories and approaches to nervous system regulation, we all have a nervous system. And the nervous system is the backdrop of all of our thoughts and emotions. And we need to really understand ourselves and get familiar with are different states that we can be in. What is the state of our nervous system? Because it matters. And the state of our nervous system influences the way we think, it influences the way we feel, and it influences our behavior. So that's the third piece, right? How aware are you of your own nervous system states? And how do you work with yourself in that? Yeah.
How do you learn how to respect your nervous system? Because again, I think that's just a conversation that it's relatively new for most people in the modern world. You know, we've had nervous systems since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Yet we're just now starting to honor the health of them and understand what a regulated nervous system actually looks like.
Yeah. And giving ourselves grace when we're dysregulated and at least understanding it, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. And then the fourth thing is these, action-focused strategies, like strategies that work. Because, you and I, we could go to Google or ChatGPT and get a plan of action to do anything right now, right? But a plan that works is one that brings in this more holistic view, this whole person view of our thoughts, our feelings, and our nervous system. And so it's like we can work with our thoughts, we can work with our emotions, we can work with our nervous system, and having a plan in place with tangibles, with ways that we're measuring our progress, can also be extremely helpful, especially if part of that strategy is taking into account where we may get stuck with our thoughts, where we may get overwhelmed with our emotions. And so it kind of brings this tangible, concrete piece to those of us who like something a little tangible and concrete too. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that, you speak to this concept of the high responsibility woman, which I definitely want you to touch on here.
Yeah.
But when I just hear that phrase, right, to me, it really speaks to the midlife woman, which is who this podcast is really geared towards.
Yep.
I work hugely with midlife women, and it's such a fascinating time because we are living at the time where hormones are declining, which help us to manage stress, help us to soothe our nervous system. And we're living at the time when we probably have more stress and responsibility than we've ever had in our life. So those two things are not really working with each other. They're kind of working against each other, right? And when you speak about strategy, my brain goes to, well, yeah, this is the reason why we have to be so realistic and I think clear-headed about the strategies we are using to try to create change, because it is, I think, largely one of the very reasons why so many people fail is because they aren't using strategy that honors the nervous system or honors their capacity in their daily life, because most women I work with have a lot going on, and I'm guessing that you do too.
Yeah. And so most strategies are set up for someone who is going to be quote unquote perfect at everything.
Oh, yes.
Right?
We love
if
that,
I'm
don't
type
we?
A and I'm never going to be tired, or I'm never going to have a weak moment, and I'm going to do everything right, and I'm going to do it all in a way that makes absolutely no sense in relation to my capacity,
right?
Then I can succeed.
Yes. And I can do all things for all people at all times and never burn out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about the high responsibility woman and how you speak to that.
Yeah. So I think that, and that term, like when it hit me, I was like, that's what it is. I think we hear about high achieving, we hear about ambition, and those are all there. But the high responsibility woman, this is like a pattern I've seen over the years in so many, I would say almost all of my clients, where as women, we are taking on responsibility to be everything to everyone all the time. And in fact, I know we're going to talk a little bit about this in my new book that I have co-written with my master coaches. My chapter is about this very thing, this high responsibility woman. And I share some statistics in there about how much more responsibility mentally, emotionally, and physically that women take on in comparison to men. And in particular, the load that we carry, the responsibilities we carry, are typically those responsibilities that seem somewhat invisible. So they're the things that someone needs to take responsibility for, but you don't really see it's kind of like if my house is clean, no one's going to notice. if I don't clean the house, everyone's going to notice, right? So
It's that invisible labor, right? Like, yeah.
it is. It is. And the fact of the matter is that as women, we have been conditioned to believe that this is how we prove our worth. This is how we are a good woman. This is how we do a good job, how we are a good mom. And so it's kind of like this. We've been conditioned this way, and truly living our lives in a way where we are taking on more than is reasonable is what seems to be the safe way for us to live. Because if we think about it, if when I'm proving my worth, when I'm doing more, when I'm taking care of everyone, I'm getting all of this positive feedback, right? I'm getting all of these messages that this is how I do a good job. This is how I'm a good person. This is how I'm a kind person. And so to say no, or to set boundaries, or to pull back and ask someone else to do more, requires us to risk someone being upset with us, rejection, questioning of if we're a good woman, if we're a good mom, if we're whatever it is. And so I think this matters because as high responsibility women taking on too much, first of all, we can't do it. We shouldn't do it anymore. And we need to understand that making that shift is going to require us to have the support we need with our nervous system and having our own back to make those changes, because it's not easy.
No. And it's also that self-validation. Like if we're always outsourcing our worth, which is what we do awesomely well as women,
right?
We're looking to the world to tell us how worthy we are. That's a huge problem. And learning how to insource that value, I think it's a missing skill set across the board. And it's such a powerful one. So I love that you're speaking to that. Yeah. So what would you say to a woman who might be listening, who is thinking like, this all sounds well and good, but it's just too late for me. Like I'm 50, 60 years into my human experience, and I have all these habits, and I have this way that I've conducted my life, and it just really feels like a part of who I am. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that this is possible for me. I don't know if it's possible for me to pursue the things that I actually want. Like it sounds fine for you, but not for me. What would you say to her?
So, and I know I do have like some resources for this very thing, so I can share those at the end. But right here, what I'll say is, and this isn't just something I'm saying because, oh, this sounds like a positive way of thinking, but genuinely because I believe it. This point in your life is the absolute best and most perfect time to make this change, because you have so much wisdom. You have so many lessons learned, and potentially you're at the point in your life where you can see clearly that the way you've been doing things is not getting you where you want to be in terms of how you feel. Like we finally learned this lesson. I feel like I can say that for me. It's like, okay, how many times do I have to learn the lesson of, burning out, overextending myself in order to say, this is a no for me? And so what I would say is, like, I'm here, and I'm just going to include Courtney in this too. We're here in solidarity saying you get to take the lessons, you get to see what hasn't worked, and you get to decide that your well-being gets to be the center of your universe from here on out. And if you're struggling with that and that's hard, then rely on us, right? Listen to this podcast, rely on me, like use the resources. Because it's worth it. I'll tell you, I had a conversation with one of my master coaches just 2 days ago. She's one of the authors in this book. She just had her 65th birthday.
Love it.
And she was telling me about, and I know not this won't appeal to all of you, but I just have to say this because this was the highlight for me of our conversation. She was on a trip with her family and her grandkids, and she was swinging on a rope on the side of a river and going into the river like with her grandkids, which is just so fun. But you know what she said? Her name's Jackie. What Jackie said is, she said, here I am, I just turned 65. And she said, the last 2 years of being immersed in this work has been the absolute highlight of my life. She said, I look at what I'm teaching people and I'm living it. She said, I'm so authentic. I'm so alive. I feel so much joy. I can't even believe it. And she has really demonstrated her ability to have her needs and well-being be first and to set limits. And she is just so wildly alive in her life. So that's what I would say. That's what I would say. Now's the time.
Oh, it's so
And you don't have to
beautiful.
swing on the rope to have it be the time. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but what a visual, right?
Right? I have a client, she's 80, and she still works full time, and she still has a 10-year plan. And I'm just
Awesome.
like, I mean, to me, it's like, what's the alternative? Like, you can live, you're at the midpoint of your life. A lot of people listening are at the midpoint of their life. What is the alternative? You stay in a space of feeling like this is just it.
Right.
Like, it just
all
is what
downhill
it is.
from here.
Yeah. Like, we have arrived at the pinnacle of my existence. And you're not feeling all that great about it. That sucks. Right. Or you live from a space of, like you said earlier, what if? Like the what if that lights you up, the what if that puts more life into your life. Like, let's go there. Yeah, I love that. Such a great reminder. Yeah. So what is one thing that you could teach a listener right now? Like one small micro move that would maybe help them maybe find bravery in taking a step today towards what they want, or maybe even finding compassion with themselves so they can take a step with less suffering. What's something that comes to mind for you around that?
Yeah. So one little tip that you can do is pick a question. I call this like a power question.
Yeah.
Where it's like something that's going to spark curiosity and new ways of thinking. And some examples of this, especially if you are working to kind of release some self-criticism or improve your relationship with yourself, it can be something like, how can I be my own best friend? You can ask yourself things like, what do I really need right now? That is actually one of the most important questions I ever ask myself, because we are famous for putting all of our needs last, not even realizing they're there. So what do I really need right now is really powerful. And a few other options are, how can I create what I want? Or what if today is the beginning of everything I ever wanted? So these are just some examples, right? But whatever it is, think of a question that inspires in you possibility, creativity, that sense of feeling capable of whatever you want. Just find a question, find the words that speak to you, and put a reminder in your phone 3 times a day and ask yourself that question over and over again. It will become a pattern. It will become a habit. It will become a permanent way of thinking that sends you on the trajectory of possibility and creation.
Yeah. And the question invites your brain to find that evidence, right? That's the beautiful thing, is it's like you're giving your brain a little direction. Like, let's look for the gold today rather than the pile of poo.
Because your brain is going to be searching for answers, right? Our brain is always scanning and it's going on repeat. Yeah. So send your brain in a good direction, and it will do wonders for you.
It will. It will. Okay. So tell us more about this book.
Okay, so the book, oh my gosh, I have it right here. We just got the first copy like a couple days ago.
Oh, it's so exciting. Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's called She Rises, Insights and Wisdom from the Women of the Masterful Coach Collective. So I have co-authored this with 12 of my master coaches that I've trained and mentored. They are brilliant women. Each woman has a chapter in the book where they're sharing their personal experience and their expertise. The topics range from grief to nervous system regulation through doodling and other forms of working with ourselves, dropping perfectionism. And there is one chapter in there focused on men. Patty Kohler, one of my coaches, her chapter is called Why I Make Grown Men Cry. And she works with men and on their emotions. So, the book really has not just something for everyone. And it has a midlife chapter too, actually. Jackie wrote it, and it's called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, What the Heck Happened?
That's great.
So it not only does it have a chapter for everyone, but it really touches on the many experiences that we go through. And, truly the fabric of this book, what's woven throughout it really is the message is, for you as a woman, how can you really find out who you are at a deeper level? How can you have your own back? How can you build the capacity within you to not just navigate life's challenges, but to truly be able to rise up and feel alive and vibrant in your life? So that's kind of the through thread. But the topics, the stories are all fantastic. A little bit of humor, tears, and everything in between.
All the things. I love it so much. Well, I know my listeners will appreciate this and probably be inspired to get the book. My community is actually called Rumble and Rise. So it's all right about the rumble in order to rise and kind of lift yourself up to that next level. So I'm sure this book will speak to them in a lot of powerful ways. So where can they find the book? Where can they find out more about you?
Yeah. So the book, you can find it on Amazon. But also, so it's called She Rises, Insights, and you'll want to put in She Rises, Molly Claire. That'll help you find it, because there's like a couple variations of that, title with so many books. But you can find me at mollyclaire.com. Instagram is Molly Claire Coaching, IG, LinkedIn, Molly Claire. If you just, Molly Claire is
Molly Claire, the internet.
That's it, the internet, Molly Claire. And I also have a book that I wrote about 8 years ago, The Happy Mom Mindset. So that's also on Amazon. But yeah, I'm here in support of women and all the humans, just feeling great about yourself and having the best life possible.
Oh, I love it so much. Oh, you're such a joy to spend time with. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with listeners.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great conversation. So honored to be here.
Thanks, Molly. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story. And it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort. And with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.